Is there a switch you can flip to just turn your kid from a kid to an adult?
Yeah, you listen to Mama Says Namaste podcast.
Let's talk about how to help your kids, equip them for adulthood, and the significance of 6,750 days.
Mama says namaste. Mama says namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama Says Namaste.
So last week I had an interview and Nathan commented that it's been a while since he's been on. It was 2 weeks in a row you were gone, baby.
I thought I was being replaced.
No, although Jules is happy to replace you, she'll also talk with you too. We need to have one with all three of us on again.
Oh, Lordy. Is there enough airspace?
I don't know. That's why we typically just do one of us for things like that, for sure. So last week's interview, or last week's conversation, I like to say conversation because it's not that I'm just drilling somebody with questions, but that we're getting excited about a topic together. And so last week I talked with Nellie Harden, and we talked, she's specifically in the arena of parenting teenage girls. And that's really where her specialty is. Yet our conversation really encompassed anybody with kids.
Right.
It really laid some foundational pieces, and really even beyond that. I mean, I always feel like there's so many parenting podcast episodes that you could listen to even without having children and just look at how is this your own personal application? Because what do we do with parenting? Every single week, we're talking about how it's from the inside out. You have to know who you are, work with who you are, be willing to face who you are in order to more effectively be able to shine brightly for everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, parenting is one of those jobs that, I think it takes, you said 6,000. Give us that number again.
6,750 days. And yeah, we referenced this last week, and this is Nellie. Now, Nellie has a whole 6750 project, which is based on this.
But, you think in the beginning when you're changing diapers and they're screaming at you, oh, my God. I could get through these next 1,000 days till they're 3. But, it just flies by. It's crazy to think about how fast and how, when you kind of quantify how much time you have with your kids, that those days, it seems like a lot, and it seems like
so fleeting.
So like it's not enough. Yeah, it's I get sand kernels in an hourglass. Like it's just crazy how fast it goes by.
It's like sands in the hourglass. So are the days of our lives. We're so 80s kids.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So we did the math ourselves on how much time we actually had left with our children. And I have 2,794 days left with Juliet as a child, not seen as a legal adult. And then she turns 18. I mean, going to the others, Ellie, we have 1725. That's all that's left. And then for Clara, 810. Nathan did the math. That's 83% of her childhood gone.
No. Experienced.
Oh, I love that shift. And wow, what a perfect opportunity to just talk about the semantics of things and how we can see these things as loss or life, as an obstacle or a journey, as a problem or an opportunity for a solution.
If you feel like you were sleeping on the couch watching the days of our lives while your kids are growing up, then yeah, it might feel like they're lost. I feel like I've experienced a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we think of equipping our children for adulthood, what does that look like and how do we prepare them? I've had some great conversations recently where, we've talked about the not raising children. We're raising adults. I mean, we're getting to the point of them being adults. There's not a switch that's flipped. If anything, it's more like a dial.
Well,
and you're just dialing up
Right.
your maturity, your awareness, your insight, and your impact as you grow and the more you know.
we're almost raising roommates. And now I know whose parents were parenting and who weren't.
Ah.
Yeah, you bad roommates. I know it wasn't your fault. It was your parents' fault.
Yeah, I know many of us have those stories of the awful roommates. And often those awful roommates, it's not always intentional or anything like that. Oftentimes it's flat lack of awareness on how to be a good roommate.
They're just doing them. Nobody's told them.
Okay, so let me build up a little bit for today's podcast here. So we got a question a while back that was somebody that had taken they have two in the family that were finishing their junior year in high school, and they had them take our lifelong learner personality snapshot. And first off, just explanation for that. That is one of the personality assessments that I sell on our website. And I call them Namaste snapshots. And they're based on the DISC personality assessment. And so we talk a lot about DISC on here. The reason I use DISC is because it's really easy and simple to explain for people. I can relate it to animals. And it is just a simple door to open up for more self-awareness. And so I use the snapshots as a way to, take a picture of you in your best light. And that's the inside you. And that's you getting a good feel for who you are and how you tick, what motivates you, what triggers you, and how you can best communicate with others. And so the lifelong learner has all this for how to just kind of get an idea of your personality. And then it goes even deeper into, are you more of the visual, auditory, kinesthetic? And then are you more theoretical or logical or systematic or philosophical in your thinking? And so it's really robust. There's a lot to it. And it's a great tool for anybody. I call it lifelong learner because I don't want to pigeonhole it to high schoolers or anything like that. It's for anyone who is eager to learn and wants to better reinforce what tools would help them in that process. So anyway, they took this and they were wondering, what are other resources to help them make wise choices based on the styles as it relates to potential career paths. I know as we're gearing up for adulthood, that's the first thing is if the kids are going to leave our home, how are they going to pay for it? They've got to figure out how to pay for their party. So
how do you do that?
Well, when we go to the work opportunity and the work aspect of it, my dad's business, 48 Days to the Work You Love, is all based on finding or creating the work and life that you love. And we take all of it. People come because they say, I hate my job, or I've got a great business idea. And they have all of these dreams about work that they come to us with. And we go, 85% of the process of finding the work you love
is what?
Is by looking inward first.
Come on. Don't do that to me. I just need a job.
And the truth is, if you're just chasing the money and your heart is not in it, it's usually not worth it. You're going to be at the cost of your health, your wellness, your mindset, your everything else, just for the sake of money. And we have a lot of podcast episodes just about what money is for us and how we approach money. So the first step in the process of adulting really is us looking inward first and us being willing to understand and recognize our own strengths and our own triggers and reactive behaviors so that we can best communicate and connect with others, and we can help to teach people how to treat us. And I've had conversations with my 13-year-old about that this week on clear communication. While it may be difficult to discuss, it's so worth it to discuss in the moment and to communicate how to interact with a friend than it is for you to put it off and put it off. And we actually I saw a great Insta reel on this where it was about facing into a storm like a cow or a bison. And, a cow is going to run away from the storm.
Run to a tree?
Right. Is going to run and hide or, keep running away from the storm, which ends up being a cow can sit in the storm for a long time, running
They
in the
usually
storm.
get electrocuted because they're hiding underneath the one tree in the field.
And then you've got the bison, and the bison faces the storm head on and walks into it. And in walking into it, he goes through it faster. And it does not mean that we have to be super confrontational and aggressive. But the point is, when we avoid situations versus helping people better understand how to communicate with us or how to connect with us, we end up building resentment, writing stories, and avoiding and potentially missing a beautiful relationship just because we're afraid to have the conversation. So, we're having conversations like that with our kids on recognizing who they are and what strengths they have. One has a great way with words. One has a great way with just reading people. And they're in that same scenario with the two that I just said, and the other has a hard time with words and struggles with it. And so it's learning how to better equip them to move forward as an adult with that life skill of knowing themselves well enough to not only be confident in who they are, but be able to communicate that to others.
And the only way they're going to figure out who they are is by getting out there and doing it. And, you guys as parents and kids together are going to have to go out there and try some stuff that's uncomfortable and learn, okay, that wasn't a good fit. And so we move on. It's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean I failed. It's just one step closer to knowing what I really want. And the more you teach your kids that and show them that in reality, one of the greatest things that we've done to prepare our kids, almost to our detriment, because now they're policing my economics, but we're pretty transparent about what we spend, and they all they're paying attention at the grocery store. What's the amount? Because we want to know, because it affects us all.
Yeah, God forbid I buy alcohol right now.
Oh yeah,
because,
no.
Is that necessary? Do you need that in your body
Mama,
right now?
Is that something you need? Apparently not. And so it gets them thinking about a budget and how important it is, because once they take some ownership of it, man, they'll continue that for the rest of their life. But if you just keep it as this quiet thing that you do and they don't understand where the money comes or why it flows and why it doesn't, then when they become adults, they're going to just have to figure it out on their own. And that's a difficult way to learn. If you're going into it and you know how to sail a boat versus just being tossed into it, those are two very different experiences. You already know how the wind pushes the boat through the water, and you've got the advantage versus somebody who's got to figure it out as they go.
That's so true. And I think about even something as simple as, one of the things that we've talked about and that our kids have been shocked to see is we're very big on zero food waste. Now, there's multiple reasons for that. We're in a we're in a fifth wheel, so we're in an RV, and we don't want a whole bunch of, we don't have compost, and we don't have a what am I thinking of? A garbage disposal. We don't have a garbage disposal or compost, for one thing, and we don't have space for a lot of leftovers. So we started going zero waste a lot for a lack of space and things like that. And just recognizing the impact. Recognizing how much food waste there is, and just that wasteful approach of just having excess that is just thrown away is something that's really, really been a big focus for us to minimize our impact in that way. And so I look at a family mealtime, and I see, a kid who takes one bite on their plate and then walks away. And I think about how many lessons have they missed? What it took to get that food on the plate, who prepared the food for them, what the cost of the food was, how it got there, and then what the heck is going to happen to it now, and who's taking care of it. There's so many life lessons in simply having a child show up at a meal, eat food that they have served themselves and taken initiative on how much that they can take in, and they have the self-discipline to get the food that they know that they can eat, to follow through with it, to understand and have gratitude for how it showed up, and then be willing to follow through the whole process and not leave it on anybody else's shoulders. That's a good human life skill, period. And so, do they only learn that at 18 as an adult, or is there an opportunity for them to learn it in your home?
Right. And they have that opportunity. We just sometimes are too tired to face into those storms.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame we shot all the buffalo in the West. Those cranky cowboys. But, we're coming back. So change your attitude. And, don't be such a cow and just weathering the storm and hoping that it's just going to go away. Facing into the situation is really a game changer. And it gives you an opportunity to discuss, your kid's not eating their food. It's like, hey, buddy, did you ever think about all the, where that's going to go? And you're going to have to live in that one day. Is that something that you want to do? If everybody does what you do, the whole world's going to be full of half-eaten burritos.
Yeah.
Let's eat the whole burrito and see how valuable that is to the whole, because it gives honor to the whole situation, the whole purpose of eating. If you don't want to eat, don't take the burrito. And that's something for a parent to recognize. Sometimes we're just shoveling food at our kids because we think they're supposed to eat and they're not even hungry.
Right. And it can completely be a parent's deal. They serve what they think a child should have. A child's stomach is not that big. They're not hungry in the moment, whatever the case is, and all of a sudden you've got food battles.
If there's one thing a child will not do, it is starve.
Yes.
I promise you that. They'll come
Exactly.
around when they're hungry. And so just relax with that whole, are they getting enough nutrition? Heavens, yes. Unless they look like a skeleton running around like they're going crazy, then you may want to check their closet, because maybe they're on methamphetamine or something like that.
Oh, geez. Well, I think
I've just never seen a kid that just starved themselves because they didn't want to eat, they didn't manage their own nutrition. Kids will eat. It's what you give them and give them access to is the issue.
Okay, we could completely get on a soapbox about food,
Yes.
and we do have a whole other episode we have multiple ones on that, on no thank you bites, survival portions, and the things that we do in our home. So that gets us into the aspect of life skills, though, because the first thing we say if you want to have your kid be able to face the world without you, number one is they need to know who they are. And looking inward is a powerful thing that you can do by example. Number two in that, though, is showing them the critical life skills. We watched a TED Talk last week on how high-level math is unnecessary. And at first I was going to argue it, and then I watched it and was like, oh, that's so valid. That's so true. And there are so many things that are high level that we are kind of forced into learning in school that we don't learn at other times. And yet how many people graduate and don't know how to do their own laundry or make a healthy meal outside of warming it up in the microwave?
Or know anything about nutrition or the human body. I mean, there's a lot of things that we miss in an effort to prepare us for our careers that aren't preparing us for our life. And, I know that these are things that we can kind of take for granted, but they really don't take that very long. It's just putting a kid in charge of the laundry, and they take ownership of that kind of stuff.
Well, again, that's part of being a family team. Your house is the first roommate experience they have. It's the first marriage experience they have. It's the first experience that they have living with another human being. And the majority of people are going to live with another human being outside of you at some point in their lives. What's that going to look like, and how are you preparing them for that now? If you're doing everything, then what you are doing is you're preparing them to do the same thing to someone else, where it's all on them. And how many relationships and roommates do we see, any kind of relationship where we see the relationship severed because one person feels like all they do is give, and the other person just takes. And sometimes it can be the nicest taker in the world who's just absolutely oblivious of their impact and the destruction they do. No, I feel like it is something where I want to make sure that I don't demonize people that are unaware and takers. It's a lot of it is sometimes lack of awareness. I mean, if you don't have the tools, I'm not necessarily going to, get mad at you for your lack of responsibility in it. What are your tools? What are you equipped with, and how can you move forward? If you're seeing your kid or you coming up against the same thing over and over again, where's the lesson in that, and what's a different tool? Don't look for the same thing to do that you've been doing. Obviously, it's not working. So find a tool that can help you. And I've seen too many times where parents expect that their kids just naturally figure out things like time management or healthy food choices or figuring out their fashion sense. And they do it all running blind or asking their other peers who are all following somebody else. I mean, they're modeling somebody. Well, most kids are modeling and looking in the mirror of something. And so what are they modeling by you?
I think a lot of parents are scared to have these conversations because, I can think of like parenting, there's kind of like, there's one big talk that you're supposed to have probably, and that's the sex talk.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of that, what expectations are there in terms of discussions about how to be a decent human being or how to operate in that relationship, or, it's just sex, so that's it? We don't talk about the complexities of love or, how to step into that kind of scenario or relationship. And so sometimes I think we kind of forget the importance of the nuances of life, just assuming that our children are paying attention and just absorbing it as we are absorbing it, and that's not always the case. I think it's good to check in with your kids and just ask them moral or ethical questions just to see what comes out, because you might be surprised, and it may spark some conversations to say, I didn't know you thought that way. Have you considered this perspective? And they may never have. They just have some friends or a worldview that you never even realized existed.
It's so true. Yeah. I mean, we do a lot of assumptions, and assumptions typically can cause for all kinds of horrible miscommunication. So simply ask and be curious. And we've, Zig Ziglar, I have a quote in the blog that says the best way to prepare for adulthood is to live like an adult. And so going back to this mom who was asking about her children that are in high school right now, how do you prepare them for life experiences? Live life. Go out there and do it. So this is where at any point as your children grow, you have the opportunity to take them alongside you and share experiences. And that experience may be grocery shopping. It may be going to the bank and figuring out a bank account or something like that. It can be, yard work or shaving. Basic life skills, anything that you are doing as an adult that is a responsibility, that is personal self-discipline, those are opportunities to invite them along. And when it comes to career options, oh man, I am such a huge advocate for apprenticeships and shadowing and simply voicing what you're interested in. I just talked to a friend this morning, and her 12-year-old is very interested in cosmetology and hair, and just so happens to have a family member who owns her own hair salon. And her mom was telling me today that she's taken Lilia to through a full day of doing hair, through cutting and mixing the dyes, through taking her to the bank to deposit the money from that day, processing, counting up the day's income and all of that, and going through all the different nuances of what it takes to own and run a hair salon. I think about, oh my gosh, what an amazing experience for this little 12-year-old to be able to see all of that and live in all of that in this moment, as a tag-along kid, and how much better that's going to prepare her to learn what she wants to do and what she doesn't want to do as she's heading out. We have kids be just kids, irresponsible, do your own thing, don't work, don't do anything, where you really think about your impact. Just focus on school until you turn 18. And now, all right, you got to figure it all out, and you need to know what direction you're going to take when you haven't paid attention to any kind of work thing until now. That's a lot of pressure for a kid.
Again, I think it boils down to having those conversations and just being curious about your kid, asking them, what would you do in this situation? Or have you considered what kind of, how you'll make money outside of me? Well, living here in this basement. Some kids have never even been asked, and so they don't know to think past that.
Yeah, I have in the blog post, I have some powerful questions that you can talk to with your kids. What would you do if an emergency comes up? What money do you need to bring in to live on your own? What are you going to do if it runs out? Who are you connected with that's going to push you forward and encourage you to grow outside of me? And those are questions that can prompt some beautiful discussions that can also, again, they're also saying, hey, I see your future without me, and I'm supporting you in that. I want to show you how I can help you with tools, not hold you tightly down and hold you back. And if you are looking at that, again, last week, one of the things that Nellie just mentioned was we discipline our children so they don't have to be disciplined later. And when I say discipline, I'm not saying corporal punishment. I'm not saying we spank our children and we ground our children and we force them into submission. What I am saying is
We educate.
we're educating our children on self-discipline. We have 6,750 days to help our children learn how to discipline themselves when it comes to things like time management and their health and their relationships and their interactions with others and their assertiveness and their drive and their purpose. All of these things are our work for that. Our field work is 6,750 days.
From the beginning. And I mean,
Yeah.
that's something to speak to your kids about is, talking to your kids about this time that's left and how important it is. One of the greatest, it was a hard conversation, but one of the greatest conversations I had with Ellie was explaining how much time had passed that I had been encouraging her to read, and she had just jumped to the playground and passed it up.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a large amount of time. And, when I said that number, just kind of, it struck her how much time
It was like 700 days or something.
Yeah,
wasn't it?
it was a lot. Yeah. It was
She remembers
700.
the exact number.
Yeah, it was like a year, 2.5 years or something like that. And she was kind of struck by that reality. And that's what I told her. I said, it's been 700 days I've been trying to get you to do this. And just the reality of that kind of, now she spends a lot of time on Kindle, and we can't really get her off of it.
I was going to
Be
say,
careful what you wish for, parents.
She's the one kid who now is always begging to read. She's hooked on a new book series right now and absolutely loving it. And so, yeah, she's now learning the time management skill of not staying up all night reading.
Right.
She learned it the hard way. She did it. She was exhausted the next day, and she said, I'm not going to read as much the next day. Like, that's great. You have to sometimes bump up against your own walls to
gonna
figure
have
out
to
what your
do
boundaries
that.
are.
And that's what parenting in a comfortable, safe home life is all about, is an environment for them to pretend to be adults.
Mm-hmm.
And, the more you can encourage them to go out there and explore who they are as adults, the better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as we're preparing them, we're recognizing that there's part of preparing them is not just the drive and the go and the responsibility. It's also the rest and the recovery. And I think this is oftentimes, again, where we miss the mark. And we as parents don't rest and recover. And we start to play a script of how we can't do this and we have to do this. And we end up kind of laying out this victim story of all of the hard work of being an adult without showing the fun side at all. And without showing the times that we recharge and that we rest and recover. And that's a valuable tool for our kids in order to help them to keep moving forward.
No. Be the martyr parent. Don't rest and recover. Grind yourself down to the bone so that they have something to look up to. That's not what you want your kids to do. You don't want your kids to behave in that way. So if they don't see examples of rest, I never really saw examples of rest, and I looked at examples of rest in your family, and I thought, Lord have mercy.
Can't imagine taking
a nap. And here I am at 40 years old taking naps and appreciating them. And so it's one of those things that if you don't lead by example in a lot of ways, or ask those questions, are you taking time to refresh yours? You've got the power of youth, but that juice only runs so long.
Yeah. So it may be that as you're preparing your kid, some of the resources and the tools that you're giving them is allowing for downtime. It may be doing travel or hanging out with a mentor, or doing even something that's just a random one-time opportunity that just allows them to get out of their own heads for a minute and think about something outside of their own world. And those little nudges, those little experiences of life, of just life outside of their own head, is critical. Because as an adult, only living in your own head, I tell you, it's an invitation for a whole lot of drama. So if you don't want a lot of drama in your life, if you want to look for an easy route, keep things simple. And that's adding a lot of awareness to what's going on, and checking in with yourself so that you are able to understand how to bring out the best in yourself, and that includes recharging.
Because a tired parent is not a very attentive parent, and a tired spouse is not a very attentive spouse.
Or supportive. You're right.
Or supportive.
Right. All right. So this whole episode can kind of be wrapped up in, I mean, and this is my opinion, but if you want to be a good human, you have two critical things to hold on to and to bring to the forefront: awareness and respect. And we as parents are charged to do this with our children and to model this experience. And the more we can help our children to understand awareness and respect, the more fun they are to be around, honestly, for everyone,
really
for you
true.
and for in your home, and of course outside of that. So for kids, are they aware of their impact in the home? Do they understand the energy they're bringing into a room? How someone feels when they talk to them in a certain way? Or who does what to contribute in the home? Like what I was talking about, even with the meal coming from, from the grocery store all the way through to the trash can or being washed. Do they show respect for others? Do they take turns to talk? Do they speak in kindness? And are they personally responsible for their own things and actions? Now, I can say, I can go ahead and be the first to raise my hand that no, my children do not do all of this all the time. I don't either.
We all do.
Right. We're not looking at setting the bar so high that there is no opportunity or no grace for mess ups. We're going to do it, and we're going to have off days, and we're going to have off moments. However, the more consistent we are, the better.
Well, and we're in a position where we can ask just about all three of our kids to do just about any chore, task, and they're capable and functional to be able to do that.
Whether they choose to leap up and do it is a different story.
Enthusiasm is another situation.
Right. But they understand the why behind it. So even if they don't like it, there's not a resentment on not understanding why they have to do it. We've gone into the why. We've taken that time. So as an adult, have you taken the time to hear your child out? To explain to them the why behind things, to really go into the detail, be open to those conversations and what questions they may have.
I thought we covered that in 3-year-olds when they were asking all the why questions.
The why questions continue, hopefully, throughout our whole lives. It's a beautiful thing to remain curious and always have that opportunity to grow a bit more. And when we are in the midst of transitions, life can get super busy. And transition is the name of the game. Change happens always in our lives. There are changes, and it seems like there's anytime somebody is like, we're in the middle of a big transition right now, and it's just kind of like, yep. And right after this one, there's going to be another. There are always exceptions to the day to day, and a lot of them are outside of our control. It's down here in Florida. It's getting hit by a hurricane, and all of a sudden, it's out of our control. It's the pandemic, and we've got things out of our control. There are things that are not necessarily things we can manage. How do we navigate it? Are we taking the time to check in with our kids during this, or are we hustling through saying we'll spend time with the kids a little bit later? We've got stuff to focus on right now. And your kids are reacting out of the process and becoming worse in the process versus feeling like they're a part of it. If you're not on the ship, sometimes it feels like you're just being dragged on the side, and being dragged through rough waves is a really rough ride. So, and with that, and going back to just the consistency and the follow through, I remember doing this with young kids, and having kids who always needed to tell me something right there in the very second, and it was a big emergency, and they had to tell me, and I've tried different tactics because I wasn't consistent. I was trying to figure something out. And I will say ignoring does not make it go away. It makes a child louder, and it makes the person you're talking to more uncomfortable because you're basically asking them to ignore that loud voice next to you.
Right.
It's hard. And so I worked with the kids.
Of some kind.
Right. Well, I worked with the kids, and what I found out is what was a lesson for me as well. So, it was a good month of boot camp, I think, of me. Every time I was around other people where I had kids apart, I knew it was going to happen. I was going to have a kiddo run up to me and interrupt me. And so I had learned from somebody, some parenting resource, I'd found a tool of when your child wants to talk to you, have them come up and simply put their hand on your arm or on your leg or wherever you want, put your hand on your arm and just as a quiet way to let them know that let you know that they are there and they have something to say. Well, great in theory. It backfires for you if you have a child who, let's say, maybe they do the hand, but they also are basically visually screaming with their obnoxious jumping down, up and down, and moving around and trying to get your attention silently. I've had that happen.
No.
Very distracting and hard to, it's, a little quieter than the screaming, but it's very distracting. I'm like, quit visually yelling at me. And then I've also had it where, the child waits patiently, and I've completely forgotten they've held on to the side of me. And all of a sudden they're like, Mommy, you never acknowledged me. Well, that really builds a lack of trust that, I'm not going to be heard, so I've got to keep fighting for it.
Yep.
And so it was boot camp for both of us to learn new tools for how to interact so that they understood that if they put their hand on me, they were to be still and not visually scream. And that I had made a promise that I was going to give them an acknowledgement and I was going to respect them enough to not talk for another hour without saying something to them. And then they learned, what's really worth saying. And so we worked back and forth with it. And so it was a time of it being a little bit more ridiculous, of me having to stop conversations when I'm in the middle of a conversation with somebody and saying, hold on, I need to interact and I need to have this conversation, and now I'm going to come back. And I mean, it's the same thing. I know it's like when you get a new dog and it's so hard because people want to pet the dog and the dog's jumping all over you and you're like, I know he's cute, but don't do that because it messes up my training. Well, same thing. Sometimes there are opportunities where we have training tools we can teach our kids. And while our kids may be cute and we can just slough it off, at some point it's not cute anymore. And how can we help equip them so that they can go through that little phase and still be great people to interact and hang around with when that, the kid flip has been, or kid switch has been flipped, and all of a sudden they're being seen as an adult that's taking over conversations or butting in or interrupting or yelling or whatever.
I mean, our products as parents in a lot of ways are, in some ways are the adults that we create. Not completely, but, we have a lot of influence in there, and we have an opportunity to suggest or bring ideas to the forefront that can, really nudge a child into their true purpose, which there's nothing better than that.
So our challenge for you this week is to sit down with your child and have some powerful questioning. Start asking them what drives them, what they get excited about, what they're curious about. Get to know what their strengths are, what might trigger reactive behavior. I mean, I know it is a huge, asset in my toolkit to know that if I have Juliet reacting in anger and kind of swinging punches blindly, and she would go into, a fit of rage. And I mean, obviously this is some of the stuff that's in the past here, but when I understood that child was looking for control over something in her environment, it gave me a beautiful tool because I was able to find what is something that she could take control of. Hint, hint, it's always mindset and response. And those are always in her control. And as I helped to equip her with that, her rage and her frustration started to shift as she learned her own coping tools, to where now I was so excited to hear her tell me the other day how she was talking with her friend about deep breathing and breathing exercises and how they've helped her to calm down. And I thought, how amazing that we've been able to work on these tools, so much so that she not only sees the value in it, she wants to help others to be able to navigate in a better way because she can empathize. She feels the pain of the frustration. And that's such a great thing. I mean, when we're adding respect and awareness, we're building empathic people. I mean, we're building people with empathy that start to understand. We make our kids do the hard stuff. When we go through the hard stuff, we understand the hard work and we have more empathy for those that have done it.
And we celebrate those big wins when they overcome those challenges.
Exactly. So get to know your kid. Maybe this is a time for the whole family to do Namaste snapshots. I might be having a special going on right now. So if you enter in the coupon code Namaste, you get 30% off any of the profiles. Not only that, you're already getting a percentage off if you buy 4 or more. So I'm adding all kinds of specials this week. For your family, if you want to dig deeper, we've got profiles for all different ages. Even with an ebook, I've got a little $5 ebook that has got a quick little assessment for even really young children and looking over kind of what their learning styles are and how to best communicate to them. So look at what drives your children, what triggers your children and you, so that you're understanding not just, how your child is working, but, how you're coming across as well. What is your relationship like with them? The more that you can get to know each other, then you can start to see, okay, who might be an expert in this field of interest that may be another person that can speak into the life of my child. What is a life skill that I know is going to start, is going to be necessary for something that they're passionate about? Well, how can I walk alongside them with this? How can I open that door? So get to know your child and what they want to do, and keep in mind everyone's beautiful personality style in it. Because the more we can do that, the more we can see and recognize our strengths and learn how to best communicate so we are not triggered by each other and reacting in fear and frustration, then we can truly celebrate how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste.
1, 2, 3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be all the change that I want to see in this world. Boys and girls, you gotta have to stand up to be free. Oh, namaste in your heart. Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.